There is a time and a season for everything under the sun. This, I believe, is found in the book of Ecclesiastes. There's a time and a season for everything under the sun. I've done a few videos talking about this, and I'm going to talk about it again. Because a time is going to come when you're going to look back, people will look back and they're going to remember this video or even others like it. Maybe even those that's been done before this. There's a change in the seasons that's occurring. And guys, I want to talk with you all, brown people, black people, about the season of change that's occurring. The platform that brown-skinned black people have had to be able to air their grievances, to be able to speak about cultural oppression and things that you have gone through, that's going to change. That season's about to go. Because what has happened is this time in the season that has been given to many by God has been used for hatred. It's been used for vitriol. It's been used to cancel people. It's been used to get revenge. Instead of a platform that could be used for a better understanding, for coming together. Maybe not everyone would want to hear it. Not everyone will buy into it. But when you have been given a season for your voice to be heard, for your plight to be considered, a time to educate others about cultural differences and experiences and how we can get along better, it has been used to call everybody racist and the white man and all these different things to cancel people. And it's going to change. You have to understand history. It's always somebody's turn. And we have been in a season right now where minorities have had the opportunities. Let me keep it speaking about brown people, black Americans. Let's talk about that specifically. That's where it's at, where many have taken this opportunity and dashed it. Because there's a lot of people who want revenge on white people. There's a lot of black people that want white people to pay for things that slave masters have done. And that is ridiculous. Black people, you have to know your own history as well. You got to comb back in your history, and I guarantee you're going to find one or two individuals in your lineage somewhere that you don't know about who may have done some horrible things. They may have killed somebody. They may have sexually assaulted somebody. They may have stolen something from another brown person. They may have stolen the deeds and the titles for people's homes. And perhaps you owe some people yourself. But are you supposed to now pay for what your ancestors did? Let's keep it a little closer to home. Let's bring it a little more up to date. Are you supposed to pay for perhaps the mistakes of your brother, your sister, what your mom or dad did, what one of your cousins did? Because there's somebody in your family that's probably been to jail or to prison. There's somebody in your family that's been accused of something. There's someone in your family that got pregnant out of wedlock. There's someone in your family that was pregnant as a teenager. There's someone in your family that's probably been accused of something, messing with a minor. It's not the same for everybody. But there may be something. There may be someone in your family that's known to be abusive, to be an alcoholic, to be a problem in society. Embezzlement, perhaps, stole something, robbed someone. Should you be held accountable for them? Should you pay for the sins of your father? Maybe you have a deadbeat dad. Maybe you have a father who wasn't present. Should you be paying for perhaps who they neglected? Should you as a mother pay for the irresponsible decisions your sons or your daughter have made? Should you as a father be paying for your son or daughter who's not taking care of someone else's family? You see, you have to understand that sometimes in our family, there's a family member who has hurt, who has destroyed somebody else, who has changed someone's life in some way, form, or fashion. Should you pay for that? So you must be very careful with this notion that all white people should feel afraid and ashamed for being who they are. It is hatred and it is bitterness. And that is something that many people of color are now using to bash white people over the head, to bash any people over the head. And what is happening is people are starting to turn away, because even those who support black people, even white people who has always had compassion for, are beginning to turn. Why? Because you're attacking them. I recently heard a man, I cannot remember what his name is. I want to say his first name might have been Adam. I can't remember, but this man basically said there's nothing you can do for black people, though the best thing that you could do as white people, as a white person, and he was a Caucasian man, is to leave them alone. Have nothing to do with black people. The name of the man was Scott Adams. And why do you think that is happening? He says nothing you do for them is ever enough. And he seemed a bit embittered or hurt. Something must have happened, because that was his thing. He's like, no matter what you do, no matter how you try, they'll attack you. They'll find something. I don't know what happened with this man, but guys, this is the truth. I remember there was a mayor a while back, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff was first coming out. This was all around the time of George Floyd, and he was standing, he was the mayor, and he was really speaking against what happened to George Floyd. His name was Jacob Frey, the Minneapolis mayor. But they wanted him to, they actually on the spot wanted him to concur with defunding the police. And they're asking him on the spot, are you going to support us in that? And of course he couldn't answer that, because that's not what this is about. And if those people did not at that moment turn against that man because he wouldn't go along with that, that is the level of just ignorance that, guys, comes back to bite you. Because what's going to happen is, I'm sure there's his fellow Caucasian friends. You can't help those people. You can't help them. They're ignorant. They're always going to find fault, find flaws. Black people, you're becoming a liability. You're making that happen. People will be less inclined to hire you, because they know if they need to, if there's something that happens on the job and they need to correct you, you're going to cry racism. If they have to, if they talk to you about something and you don't like it, you can cry racism. There are people that cannot take the risk anymore. They cannot afford to lose their job. They cannot afford to lose their position. They cannot afford to lose their credibility. They cannot afford to lose their all that they've worked for by hiring people that looks like you, because what they see is a liability. Because you get on the job, and if there's something you don't like, you're going to have Al Sharpton on speed dial. There's something that they say, you're going to take it as racism. If they say something and you take it a certain way, whatever you interpret racism to be, because right now racism has become something that is more subjective. It's what you felt when they said this, how they did this, when they greeted this person, who has the bigger desk. All these different things can become problematic. And what you're doing, brown people, you are closing doors for your children. You're closing doors for yourself. They look at your application, they sit down and they do a face-to-face with you and see that you're a black person, they're not going to hire you because you're known as being people who are volatile, people who are quick to make allegations, accusations, and you ruin things. Is that the truth? No, because I'm a brown person. We're not all going around ruining things. But there's a lot of people right now that on the world stage is acting like a bunch of sea donkeys, as I've said before. Ignorant. I can't tell you how many times I've seen brown people on national television. If there's something that they don't like, or there is a topic that perhaps they don't agree on, rather than eloquently stating their points, they are yelling and screaming and hostile. Now, this is not all. There are some brown people who can sit there and articulate themselves with high intelligence and without any sort of hostility and anger. But more often than not, the world is getting a front row seat to people who are supposed to be educated, people who are even wealthy, that sits on the world stage. And when there's something they don't agree on, they're loud, they're obnoxious, they're name calling, they're antagonizing the person who is of a different ethnic background. And you know what? A lot of times white people are not going, a lot of them, they're not going to win that argument. And maybe if they could, they still maintain a certain level of decorum. But the brown person is loud, obnoxious, accusatory. And it happens a lot. And like if I speak like this and I sat there with brown people, I'd be called an Uncle Tom. I'm going to be called a sellout. There'll be hostility. There'll be loudness. There'll be octaves and voices, hostility. That is a name calling. There is a level of ignorance that's there. If you don't agree with me, I'm going to call your name. If you don't agree with me, I'm going to mock you. If you don't agree with me, I'm going to make you feel like you're stupid. This abusive disposition of brown people has to change. And what I'm telling you all is the tides are going to change. People are going to get tired of you. You have to understand, for some reason, there's already this dislike for black people. There is a stereotype, there's an assumption that we're all loud, we're all violent, we are all lowbrow in thinking. Okay? It's worldwide. That's why people are getting bleaching cream. People are trying to be light, bright, almost white, because that is a known fact. So imagine now you start getting on society's nerves. When the tables are turned, people are going to be more than willing to go along with whatever it takes to get rid of you guys, to get rid of us. But it's not going to be done the way that you think it's going to be done. Will slavery come back? No, it's not going to be called slavery. It's going to be called something else. Because if you're showing yourself to be problematic, a menace to society, they can look back and look at, well, look, when they had a platform to speak, when they had freedom, look what they did. When we try to be more accommodating, look how they behaved. Whether the accommodations, whether it's for political, because most people, when all this stuff that's going on, Black Lives Matter and all this stuff, there's always an agenda. There's always a reason. Okay? But the bottom line is they will look back and look at your behavior. When it is your turn, when you are now the one who are being vilified, when you're now the ones that's being castigated, it's always someone's turn. And the way that what you sow is what you're going to reap. If you sow hostility, and if you sow resentment, and if you sow vitriol and hatred, it's going to come back to you. You're already dark. You already got a strike against you. Not that being black is a strike, okay? Let's make that clear. But in society, for the most part, there is a preconceived idea of what brown people are like based on TV, things of that nature. But also, brown people, newsflash, sometimes the racism that you face, even people, black people that's going to school, that are doing well, even if they haven't had the best education, they were raised differently. Sometimes, guys, the reason why we may face some things and we may face the stereotypes and we may face discrimination. Yes, these individuals might be at the core racist, but sometimes you can thank your fellow brown person for going into these people's businesses and doing things in a way, behaving in a way that was that had such an impact that they now just have an aversion to black people. I've lived among black people. I grew up around black people in black neighborhoods, and I know the difference. I know the behavior. I know the abuse to one another. I know the disrespect. I know it's very rarely you see black people passing each other and saying hello or good morning and acknowledging one another. I know what it's like because you speak proper English, they say you're acting white. I know what it's like when they're comparing each other's skin to see who's the lightest, who's the brightest, and who's too dark. They are the ones that's calling each other the N-word. The N-word is going to stay forever because black people keeps it alive. You cannot expect other cultures to treat you better than you treat yourselves. As I said in the past, it's not the white man dirtying up your neighborhoods. It's not someone of another culture tearing up the blinds in your neighborhood. Why is it you go and it's dirty? Why can you not keep your neighborhoods clean? Why is it when sometimes if they build new communities, you all will go in there, tear up all the blinds. You go through the neighborhood, all the blinds are tore up. Why? You're inside. How is your house getting tore up on the inside? Why are there sheets and blankets in the windows when you had blinds that came with a place? These are the things that we have to take into account. Why is it that when most black people get rich, they leave the black neighborhoods and they go and be in white, quiet neighborhoods? Or why is it when some black people decide to stay within, they become wealthy and they stay within the community, that they end up getting killed or have some issue or people getting mad at them because they're not buying them a bus for the church and giving them money? Why? Why is it always expected that even if someone that's within the family, they do well, everybody expect that this person is now going to pay all the bills, take care of everything? No, we don't need to work anymore because we've got this person to handle things. Now, this is not the case in all families. There are lots of families who they work, they're responsible, they're going out there and they're doing a lot of different things. But the reality is what is more so out there are the people with their pants hanging down, being loud, robbing, beating up old ladies, behaving in a certain way. Then those that become educated, they get on TV, they're loud, they're shouty, they're doing all these different things on national TV, acting like a sea donkey. So what they look at is no matter how educated you seem to be, you're still a loud, obnoxious Negro. You still don't know how to speak. You still don't have control over your anger. Where does that anger, where does that bitterness come from? Because a lot of black people, you grow up in a house where you're being yelled at, where you're being called dumb, where you're being called stupid, where you're being called ignorant, where you're being beat, when you're being done wrong. And even though you become educated, you still have that hostility within you, and you take it on national television, behave exactly how they expect you to behave. Go to restaurants, go to nice places and act up. And then other black people who are actually law-abiding citizens are having a hard time because guess what? Ray and them already been up here. Tow up the man's store, stole. Why are people following you around in the store? Yes, they may be just racist and hate you. But a lot of times other black people has gone in there and stole and behaved in a certain way, and now it makes it hard for you. So we have to police one another up. But we also know that when you try to correct those to your left and to your right, what happened? You may get beat up, shanked, stabbed, laughed at, ridiculed. So black people, we got to do our homework here. Racism is real. There are white people out there who are hateful, who are bitter, who are really, really doing wrong. But a lot of the atrocities that's going on within black community, you're right there neck and neck with these people because you're killing each other too. You're calling each other nigger. You're killing each other too. The only difference, you're just not wearing the KKK suit. It's time to go back into not only, number one, really studying history as well. Everyone, a lot of black people talks about slavery. You were never a slave, so knock it off. You're not a slave. And if you truly, truly, in my opinion, if you truly had any respect for what those slaves went through, there's no way you can sit here calling each other a nigger. If you truly have respect for how the things that they had to fight for, you will be doing everything in your power to try to get the best education that you can. The very least, going to school. I understand there's certain situations and circumstances where there are hardships and extraordinary situations that may prevent some people from doing so. Sure, your schools may not have the best books. We do know there is inequality in the quality of books that schools in urban districts will get, and that's something that is wrong. Okay? Even the things that you learn about. I feel that, just to change the topic for a second, I think a lot of times what black people, brown people should be talking about, instead of always talking about how much you hate white people and what they owe you, use this platform to talk about perhaps changing history books, right? Or making some additions to it. Because all we read about in history books is about slaves. And you have your, I'm not going to call the token black people, but pretty much they're just, we're going to learn about Frederick Douglass. We're going to learn about, who else? Harriet Tubman. Okay. We may learn about George Washington Carver, all these things. But what do you notice? All of them were slaves. Right? They were slaves and they got their, well, I'm not sure if Harriet Tubman got educated, but she played a very crucial role in bringing people to freedom. So it's all this stuff where you got help from the white person and the white people brought you in, the abolitionists help you, all this stuff, and then we became free people. Okay, but most of the stuff you see black people hanging from trees and all this stuff. But I would propose having a facelift in history books where you have things in there about people who were not slaves. Okay, they may have had been descendants of it, but they were born free and they went to school and they were educated. Let's learn about the first black millionaire. Let's learn about black surgeons. Let's learn about the physicists. Let's learn about the inventions that black people created, like potato chips and the traffic light. You don't know that, do you? No, you don't. These are the things that we need to talk about. Black astronauts. That way, we're not seeing one specific race that's always achieving and doing well and happen to help the little black pickaninnies on the way. But you're seeing people from all cultures who have done things. What do we know about the Jews? All we know about is the Holocaust. Let's learn about those who have, yes, the Holocaust is crucial and it is important, but let's learn about the Jewish culture. Let's learn about the Chinese culture. Let's learn about Japanese. Let's learn about Africans. Because what do we know about Black Americans, about Africans? Oh, they're just running around somewhere wearing bones and things of that nature. Do you know about anything else about them? No. So a lot of times there is this gloss over of other cultures where all you're showing is the negative things and the come ups of cultures. But then when you look in history, you see they go into great details about white people and historians and who created the electricity and who did this and who did that and what wars they won. It's all glorified, right? They go into great detail. But brown people, when you have this opportunity to have your voice heard, instead of sitting there talking about how we hate you and we want everything back and y'all are this, you know what? Use it for something else. Use that opportunity, guys, to show these differences and to talk about, let's have our let's have our books that has history books that talks about the Moors and talks about the black pharaohs, different individuals, and all cultures, truly. So that way, we're not always looking at ourselves as victims, because that's the problem. What are most black people looking at here? You're looking at, oh, this is what y'all did to us. You identify with slavery. That is it. Because really, that's probably all that's been put in your head in school. And you know what I mean? This poor mentality, poverty thinking. But I'm sorry, we can't hold on to that all the time, because as I've said in the past, there are people of other cultures, black or darker than you, that's come to America and went to school and took advantage, grew up, went to the same school with you in the urban area, did the best that they could, got into colleges and opening stores, and you're running in there buying their stuff. And they're browner than you. Not all brown people were slaves. There are plenty who have achieved things, who have done things. But at the core of all these individuals who have succeeded, they worked hard. The doctors, the lawyers, the president, the first black president that we have had in the United States of America. At the core of all that, he went to school. He worked hard. You can't go around blaming the white man, because you can't blame them for certain things. Yes, there's certain things that happen systemically. Okay? For example, if someone goes to prison, they go to jail, they come out, they have this thing on their record. People are not going to hire you. If the person can't get a job, then they're going to go to any means necessary to get money. Okay? Yes, a lot of times in black areas, there are a lot of alcohol, a lot of liquor store, and all these things, and these loan places with high interest rates. I get that. If someone can't get a job, then they have to do something else. I understand in the very beginnings that prisons were created to get rid of the socially unacceptable folks. Okay, sometimes the justice system works for certain kinds of people. Yes, we know there are some sort of imbalances with the law. The scales are not even, because a poor person, you'll be handcuffed with your hands behind you. A rich person will be handcuffed with your hand before you, with their hands in front, with a nice little coat put over them, gently put in the car, where the poor man just might be hogtied. We understand that the poor person will go to prison for coke and having drugs, coke, marijuana, whatever, but the rich man talks about it freely on television. We know that, and nothing's going to happen to them. It's just like, oh, okay, we get that. But even with that being said, while there are some things, some individuals who may sully the law, there is also more than enough justice out there where you can do well. You can achieve things. You can be protected. And it's time to stop blaming white people for everything. You were not a slave. You were not a slave. You were not a slave. End of story, period. You were not. So stop taking these moments to have an excuse to be lazy, to have an excuse to be loud and obnoxious, to blame somebody. You need to be mad enough to go to school and do better. You need to be mad enough to hit those books, to work harder, to go to work on time. Because truly, brown people, you know that this is the truth. You guys sometimes are the laziest. Not all. But I have been in charge. I have been in charge of hiring people, interviewing people, I have ran several clinics. I've lived in certain parts of the world, worked with different type of people. And you know who I had trouble with? Brown people. And I was not that supervisor that disliked my people. I treated everybody as if, I think about this. This is someone's mother, father, brother, sister, uncle, aunt's child. I don't disrespect people, but they're the ones I had issues with the exception of a few. Coming to work late, always have an excuse for something. And even when I was the most understanding, they still wanted more. Did the bare minimum. Wasting time. Being late. Did I say that? Having an attitude on top of it. And when you are now trying to do corrective training or do a performance improvement plan, they run to the union. If anybody know how to be a victim, it's black folk. Not all. But I can count on one hand the amount of individuals that I met who were on time, did what they were supposed to do. I'm talking about in the workplace, employees. Employers. I can count on one hand the amount of black employers that I met that were actually fair and respectful, because having that power sometimes goes to their heads and how they treat people. But in all fairness, that can be anyone, because when it comes to being in a position of authority, there are so many layers to it and so many things you will discover about yourself as a supervisor. If you don't keep certain things at the forefront of your mind, you can become a complete jerk. But I've seen it, my brothers and sisters. I've seen this. I've seen the difference in going to a place run by black folk and going to a place run by white folk. I've seen the difference in going to a black hair salon and, well, I've never been to a white salon, but I've gone in one before with a friend and see the difference. And we're not talking about, oh, they have the nice posh places. We're not talking about that. We're talking about professionalism. Going into a white-owned barbershop, a Korean-owned barbershop, and going into a black-owned barbershop. And I can tell you, in all my years, I have gone to, there's 2 places that were super professional. One, a black lady, a black-owned business in Germany. Another one was in El Paso, Texas. Sondrea, I remember her name. Professional. I'm talking about clean, professional, on time. Booking is on time. Okay? And barbershop, currently 1 barbershop right now that I can say on time, professional. And keep it clean and it's professional. There's not a bunch of cursing. There's not a big bunch of big juicy booties on the TV that I'm having to have my boys covering their eyes and putting in their headphones. No one's laying up in the chairs. I go to this barbershop, professional, clean, barbicide is blue as the ocean. It's few and far between. And unfortunately, black people, what's happening is this. You see, when it's sad when people of other cultures, when they see a black person who follows the rules, who is on time, who speaks and articulates correctly, who is not violent, who does not behave a certain way, who is open, who's eclectic. You know what? This is a shock. This is a surprise. This is like, wow. And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that if you're professional, on time, doing your job, like they're like, man, it's so surprising. No one does that if a white person is doing those very same things. No, because culturally, it's like, oh, this is how they are. But that's the preconceived notion. But when it comes to us, oh, if you're on time, if you're doing your job, wow, surprise, surprise. And we have to change that. But it's not going to happen as long as you have the crabs in a barrel mentality. It's not going to happen when now you have a platform and all you're doing is yelling and screaming and attacking white people and attacking people of different races and being loud and being disrespectful. You know, there's a time, a moment, a time. There were times you would never have that. There would never be never be any notion to even listen to what black people have to say. And so when times and seasons change and you're being given that platform, don't use it to be ignorant, to show yourself, to be C Donkey 2.0. Articulate, speak, bring up the things that have been your experience. But you must be able to convey that without profanity and without being angry and loud and blaming and accusatory. If you lay those things out and you can show the struggles and the things that's there and then have a solution that's not about you owe us, and have suggestions and lay that out there, that is good. And at some point, there can be change. Do you know how much change it could be made rather than going and talking about we hate the white man? Let's talk about books. Let's talk about schools. Let's talk about opportunities. Let's talk about making changes to the urban district. This has been your opportunities, guys. Where things would have happened, whether it's out of guilt or for political move or for more votes, who cares? These are opportunities. But if you're burning and looting your own areas and you're cussing out white people and you're cussing out other people, you're beating up other people, and then you have people who just want to be angry and entitled, I'm going to go to this area, I'm going to take, and I'm going to punch the old woman in the stomach, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And now I have my education. I can now sit on the court bench and I can sit on national TV and I can just, with all my education, still act like a knucklebuck. There's a time and a season when things will change. And you understand that right now you may be able to vilify white people and you may be able to attack them, but the tables will turn and it will be your turn. It will be your turn. And this will be worse. So what you do in your life, be careful. What you sow, you're going to reap. You know, we put a seed in the ground. You put an apple seed in the ground, you're going to get an apple what? Tree. And it's going to bear fruit from season to season. And the same thing in how you treat other races and other cultures and other platforms. And black people, I'm going to tell you this. If you got rid of all the white people on the planet and was just all brown folks, you would still destroy one another. Because there's a mentality, there's a hostility, there's anger. Because a lot of you were raised in environments where you were around people who were yelling and screaming, whooping, beating, and even if you were not, you knew somebody like that. There's no profanity, no cursing in my house, but I have friends that's cursing and profanities. You walk in, why? You hear somebody getting whooped and beat somewhere. You go to school, there's some hostile kid. You're in the 4th grade and there's this bully that looks 37 in the face, like he have 4 or 5 jobs, just hardened and bitter, want to beat up everybody. Why? Because at home he's being beat up. He's being bullied. She's being bullied. So she comes to school, they come to school with an asphalt face and that darkness in their eyes, trying to find the smallest person to beat up because they've been beat. And it's just a toxic thing. It's like a cycle. Change begins within yourself. Because you cannot be demanding something from white people that you don't give to one another. You can't be demanding equality when you're still comparing the brownness of your skin. You can't be demanding all these things where you have people that's sitting in their cars and talking about how much they hate black people and dark people. That's the stupidest thing I've seen. You are as Cocoa Black as Cocoa Puffs, and you're in here talking about how you hate black women and you hate black men and you hate this and you hate that. You're not going to see white people really doing that. You don't see other cultures doing that. And when they feel that way, they are smart enough to not sit on there and disparage one another. But why will black people do this? And guys, as I said before, if you love someone and they're of a different race, go for it. No worries. But cut out all that like you're the last of the Mohicans. Oh, all black people are terrible. Well, what about you? All black men, they're this way. No, all the black men you dated, all the black women you dated a certain kind, a certain type. Because there's probably a nice guy, a nice girl that liked you, but you didn't like them. And if you kept choosing a toxic person over and over again, then there's something in you that allowed you to keep choosing that sort of person. And if that doesn't change, even though you go over to the white side and you act different because you think you're supposed to, you're eventually going to go in and screw up that person's life, because now you're going to be the one that's hostile and giving that person a hard time. And that white person or that Japanese person, that Chinese, whoever you're with, they don't know how to behave like that. So you're in there getting your way, and your mixed race or your white, any other culture, boyfriend, husband, wife, girlfriend is miserable because now you're the bully because you took all that nonsense with you. I'm going to stop there. I have a video that says love is not a color, okay? And you can check that out. But I don't hate brown people, but I'm not buying into this thing of being a victim. You're not a victim. And that's something that I tell my loved ones. You are not a victim. I don't want you to follow this nonsense. You're a victim. You need to hate white people. No. You watch people's character. You watch how they behave. And right now, seasons are going to change. This season where black people is getting all this platform and all this, everybody want to hear what you have to say? Use it for good. Use it wisely. And stop being angry, because people are getting tired of it. Just like that one man said, leave them black folks alone. Stay away from black people. There's nothing else you can do for them. There's just nothing else you can do. There's no helping them. They're always going to be angry. All it takes is one person to say it. Even if it's unpopular, all it takes is one person to say that. And when they say it, it takes up momentum. Remember, all it took was Hitler to say something that probably other people feel, and you realize there is the majority that will have this sentiment. And I fear that it is all too easy for the idea of marginalizing and getting rid of, or somehow using certain influences or certain tactics to demonize black people. I fear there'll be way more people than what you think that's going to go along with it. And believe me, what they're going to do, they'll pull out the ones that they think is okay. But things can change. Things can really change really quickly. And there's a lot of black people that say, they're not going to do this to me. I'll do this, I'll do that. What do you think the military's for? The military is to fight against enemies, both foreign and domestic. And if you think about it, the United States military can go and subdue a nation that has weapons and all of that, okay? If they decided that they needed to subdue you, it's going to be very easy. I doubt it'll get that far. But if you are rendered as public enemy number one and a threat, you must understand that the narrative is going to be along the lines of a threat. It's going to be articulated in a way, oh, it makes sense. Now you get a bunch of people who are already feeling salty towards you all. It can happen. It can happen. And it can change. The same way masks came in, it can change, guys. It can change really quickly. So when you are given an opportunity, don't use it to show your tail. Don't use it to not get revenge. Use it to educate others about yourself, your differences, your culture, your background. Use it to now learn about, to so people can understand that there's more to Black people than basketball and chicken and all the stereotypes. A lot of people know nothing about Black history, not even Black people, because that's why they always go to slaves. And they don't even know that they were actually Black kings that were selling slaves to Europeans for guns and weapons. It was common trade. Because a lot of people don't know that. Stop always just identifying yourself as a slave, and identify yourself and see yourself with other people who achieve things. But to unfortunately, what a lot of people is doing, they can't measure up with others who have broken the mold and pushed and educated themselves and work hard and open businesses, because that requires work. Oh, well, let me go and compare myself to slaves and talk about reparations and who owes me. Because at the core of it is laziness. At the core of it is fear. At the core of that complaint and that narrative is hatred and bitterness and even self-loathing. Time for change. Because change is going to come. And this message is not popular. You may say whatever about me, that's fine. All I'm saying, brown folk, is think, think, think. There's got to be one of us, a few of us, that's saying this. There's plenty of opportunity for you. Do your job. Whatever job that you're doing, go to work on time. Wash your uniforms. Really punch in the time that you're supposed to. Do your job. When you're sitting at your desktop, do it for real. Say good morning to your neighbor. Tell your friend when they're doing something wrong. Don't sit there when a mother's calling her son stupid and dumb, or a father speaking that way to his daughter. Because you cannot expect something to change. You cannot expect any other culture to care more about you than yourselves, than your own culture. And it begins in your house. Change begins with you in the mirror. Times are going to change and things are going to turn around. Black people, where are you going to be? Where are we going to be when the smoke has cleared? When someone new is in power? When there's a new agenda? When a new enemy has been targeted, where a new group of people have now been recognized as problematic, where will you be? Think about it.